Hi guys, and welcome to Steelers Fan TV for what is a live. It's sort of a question and answer session. Depends how you see it. Last week I did something similar to this. I did a live vidcast talking about I can't remember what we're talking about, but it was something along the lines of the Steelers and yeah. So obviously, in the event that we don't get any questions in this video, I will sort of improvise and I'll just sort of talk normally as I would in a vidcast. So what we're going to talk about really is, well, what I'm going to talk about is the playoff push, and sort of if we're going to get there, if we're not. Obviously, if any questions come in at any point, then I will just sort of stop where I'm at and I'll go back and talk about the question. So, obviously, playoffs are something that we've never really not got in terms of when we've sort of played in seasons gone past, and if we don't get them, then we're going to have a look if it would be like a big thing for the club, if it'd just sort of mean that we'd go downhill, or whether it'd just mean nothing and we'd just carry on as we are. So, obviously, would it be a big thing for the club to not get the playoffs? Well, yeah, because I think if we didn't get the playoffs, I do think that a lot of sort of fan revenue would sort of go down. So, a lot of people would sort of lose faith in the side. They'd sort of not want to come to games really as much next season. And what that would possibly cause is fans not renewing their season tickets, fans not coming back for more, sort of newer fans not wanting to come back to the Steelers. Because obviously, when I was a new fan, I was coming back to the Steelers a lot. I was sort of waiting on games. I went to, I think in the first season I properly started going to the Steelers, it was the 2015-16 season. And I think I went to every game from December onwards. And obviously before that, I'd not been a really massive hockey fan. I just sort of went to one game and I just thought, oh yeah, that's all right. I might go again. Then I went to a few more and it was like, yeah, I'll keep going to this. But I think the main reason behind that is because we were good and we were sort of striving to win the league. We were striving to win every single competition there was. I think in that first season we got to the Challenge Cup semi-final, playoff quarter final, and then the obviously we won the league. And the season before we nearly won everything really. And obviously with that comes a lot of success, and it sort of invites fans to come back and keep watching the side as much as possible. And obviously if you do watch the side a lot, then you sort of get used to it and you sort of get used to winning ways, and then once you start losing, then it just sort of goes to pot really, and you don't really want to watch it that much anymore. So could it affect the fan revenue for the if we don't make the playoffs? I do think it possibly could. And obviously, if it did, then that would mean that the sort of club would lose a lot of revenue and a lot of money from us failing to make the playoffs. So what it could do in terms of the players if we didn't make the playoffs, well, I think some players could potentially lose faith in the side, and obviously the club that they're playing for. So if that happens, then obviously what that could do is sort of potentially bring the number of players that we have down, sort of number of I don't think it'd affect Tom Barrasso, so I don't think it'd affect the staff, but I do think it'd affect the players, and I think quite a few players would potentially leave because we're an underachieving side, and obviously the playoffs are sort of big for sort of doing well, and playoffs do have potential to cause upsets, and obviously if we don't get there, then we can't potentially cause an upset against any side, and that would mean that obviously the fans would sort of be a bit disheartened and the players would be disheartened, and I do think that some players would go, if you like. So that'd be frustrating for one, because obviously we wouldn't see the players. So what we're going to keep talking about is the sort of the so it's a hard subject really, the playoffs, because at the end of the day it's something that the club isn't used to talking about. So are we going to make the playoffs? Are we not? We're used to talking about, are we going to win the league or are we not? Now, obviously, to jump from where we finished this time last season, I think we were in second or third, to jump all the way down to seventh, sorry, is quite a big jump. And obviously, if we do end up not making it, then you've just got to look at last season as to why we've made this like such a big jump down really, and why it sort of could cost the club in terms of like what they have. Obviously, last season we had a lot of sort of paying customers with a lot of interest in the side, and but this season I can see just from looking around at the arena that a lot of fans have just started sort of not coming anymore, and they just sort of don't want to be a part of it all. And yeah, it's frustrating as sort of a fan like myself, but at the end of the day, the players also need to respond to that. So if the players are looking around, sort of on the ice, they're sort of looking around, seeing that people just aren't turning up to games, I think their response needs to be, we've just got to prove a point now, towards the end of the season, that we can perform at the top level. As I've said, guys, if you are new to the video, just comment any question you have, and I'll answer it as best possible. It can be about anything you want it to be. But obviously, I'll just talk at you until a question comes in, and I think it'll pop up on the screen, so it's not too hard for me to read. Obviously, so what we're going to go back to is we'll keep talking about the playoffs and sort of what it could potentially do. So, if we have a playoff game, obviously, the atmosphere for them is much better atmosphere than it is for the league all season. At the Guildford Flames playoff game last season, I remember that it was just like football cheers constantly. Sort of what that did was it just sort of had a real response on the players. Just messing with the screen a second, just checking something. Okay. Yep. Okay. Just sorting something out on the live stream. So yeah, the atmosphere and what it does really. If the side do make the playoffs, then the atmosphere that is from the crowd that gets sort of real sort of shouting, screaming, chanting, it sort of deflects onto the players. And as you saw last season with their performance against the Flames, it really had an effect on their overall performance. And obviously we ended up winning the playoffs. Sorry, not winning the playoffs, getting to the playoff final. That was the season before. Oh God, time flies like. But last season, obviously against the Flames, I wasn't expecting an atmosphere at all. I was expecting really sort of low down mood because it was against the Flames. Obviously, the season before it was against the Panthers. Now the Panthers playoff game was something else in itself. We know how that feels to go and win, and we know how it feels to sort of come out of the playoffs thinking, yeah, we made a real impact. Now, obviously, we didn't have the best of seasons, like at all. We didn't have the best of seasons, and I do think that sort of deflected onto the players as well. And they responded to the atmosphere that we were creating against the Panthers in that second leg, having lost the first leg really heavily. And they obviously upped their game, and I think the players realised that the fans were behind them, and I do think that sort of pushed them over the line really in terms of beating the Devils in the final. Whereas last season, I think that we sort of expected to win the final. I don't know why, but I just think we felt that we were going to go and win the final after last year, and the atmosphere wasn't half as good in the NIC for the final. So, because we didn't end up going to win the final, I think it sort of drove a lot of players out of the club. It sort of lost quite a lot of respect really. And because we lost quite a lot of respect in that regard, I do think that sort of numbers have dropped. But apparently the average attendances this season have gotten higher by about 10%. So we're obviously doing something right off the ice, sort of in public relations, to bring the fans in. And I think that's good on the club itself, because that sort of affects the way that we're playing. Sort of if it's quite a close game and the fans are really behind us, then we're more than likely to be the ones that push over the line. I mean, you saw against the Coventry Blaze in October that we can do it if the fans sort of give the players something to sort of perform to. Obviously, yeah, okay. And yeah, so first question, plain and simple, would you keep DeLuca next year? Yeah, most definitely, because at the end of the day, he's come in. Um, First couple of weeks he hasn't really performed, and people sort of recognise that he hasn't performed, and sort of started getting on his back a bit more. Sort of starting to say, is he really the person that we needed? But the fact that he's racking up the points well and truly now is genuinely like sort of good. And I think that people can respond to that because when DeLuca's racking up the points, I think the players around him will sort of want to sort of raise their game, which is what I've seen. So obviously when DeLuca scored the other night, I just noticed that how much the players just sort of wanted to raise their level really to his, which is why I do think that we have started playing a bit better because as soon as players start to sort of pull their weight and show the team sort of how to play, I do think that players around them do respond to it. So yeah, definitely I would keep DeLuca next year, regardless of his price. Really, I'd just keep him and make him one of the main imports. So that's that question. Next one. We ain't got a question yet, so we're just gonna wait for a little bit. Obviously, I was talking about the sort of playoffs, and so I'll reinstate the context. Playoffs, what the fans do, how the players respond to it, and it does link with that DeLuca question really. Sort of when a player is showing that they want to perform and they want to do the best possible, then players around them will respond. And obviously, if the players are responding, then the fans are going to be much better. So they see a good performance by a player, fans are pumped. You know, they're ready to sort of see us perform even better. You know, they're ready to see us, well, do anything really on the ice. I can guarantee that if a player does something good like clear the puck on a what penalty kill, and the fans will be clapping, applauding. You know, you can ask more than one question. By the way, I'm just carrying on with this is until we get a question. Obviously, 2 viewers at the minute. Yeah. So we'll now talk about sort of how Tom Barrasso's sort of career at Sheffield could sort of be hindered if we don't make the playoffs. So if we don't make the playoffs, Barrasso, I do think, could potentially leave because he has said he wanted to sort of coach in a higher league. He wanted to coach in like the KHL, and if there was a job there on the cards for him, and we're a side that hasn't made the playoffs, then I do think that he could sort of pack his bags and leave because he wants sort of a side that are willing to sort of respond and perform to the top level, doing it his way. Because he said in the interview the other week that he doesn't care if we're an underachieving side, but it will be done his way and no one else's. And what I thought that did was sort of make the players think, well, I think it did make the players respond because you saw it against Manchester on the Sunday. The players went out and responded to the 6-0 defeat to the Glasgow Clan. And then obviously on the Wednesday, we went away to Guildford and we managed to get the win there. It was sort of, it was excellent really how we did that. Getting the win away at Guildford, and then obviously what the fans seemed really confident last night. So the fans that were around me, I'm in block 210 surrounded by people, and it's like I can tell the atmosphere last night was sort of one that I haven't witnessed in a while really at the arena, that the sort of thought that we're going to win. And if Tom Barrasso can see that from the fans, then maybe he'd stay, because obviously the fans are sort of acting really well, sort of putting it on him as if he's sort of going to do well for us. And if that's the case, like, I do think that he could potentially stay, because he wanted to come into a club that was successful, and obviously he could tell under Paul Thompson we were not going anywhere. Then obviously if we approach Barrasso and tell him like, oh yeah, this is happening to the club and we've lost his manager and this and that, then yeah, okay, and obviously this and that approach in sort of Barrasso, this is where we're at, we've sacked our manager, can you come and help us really? And I do think that Barrasso came in and sort of helped us. So we've got another question about Kieran Brown and ice time. So do you think he should get more ice time? Well, Kieran Brown he's a good player, and he's proven that really. He got the goal last season, Um, I don't think he had as much of an impact as Liam Kirk did in his first year. I think Liam Kirk had much more of an impact, really. Um, but the thing with Kieran Brown is he's not afraid to drop the gloves. He's not afraid to get physical. He's not afraid. He's just not afraid, really. He's only a young lad. I think he's younger than me. He's a really good hockey player, and if we used him more, I do think he'd be just as effective as Brandon Whistle, if not more effective. Um, so if we brought him on the fourth line, because obviously I've noticed that we are short benched on the fourth line, then if we brought him in, then I think we would sort of improve, really. Okay. Um, and if we played him, if we improve, then well, I think we would be a better side. Um, with Kieran Brown in. So yeah, really on that, I do think we should give him more ice time because I think it'd give him more experience and it would sort of help his progression to become a better hockey player. Even though he's already a good hockey player, he would become a better hockey player. Um, Next question that I've just got asked is about Silikis and why would we bring him in if we're not going to play him? So Silikis obviously he's got an absolute mouthful of a name, Sylvester Silikis, and he's come into the side, and I think he's got about 3 shifts in 4 games or something along those lines. His first game came against Cardiff, actually, so he'll have played 5 games. He'll have played 5 games, and I think he will have had about 3 shifts in those 5 games. So why I think we brought him in was potentially just to put the pressure on the players. So if he's sat on the bench and a defenseman's underperforming, they'll know just by that player sat on the bench that I need to raise my game and I don't want to be benched, if you know what I mean. I think that could be the potential thinking of Barrasso if he brings that extra defenseman just to stay there on the bench and just sort of watch the game. And he might have told the players, like, we've got a defenseman on the bench here to bring on if any of you players aren't performing. We've got someone who can gain experience on the ice. So that's the reason I think we've signed him. Not to be an impact player, just simply to be sort of a player that you can see, like, oh yeah, he's there. He could be a potential replacement for someone. So I'll give you an example. Take Davy Phillips is underperforming for whatever reason. If we push someone on Davy Phillips' line, so promote someone, and then put Silikis on the second line defence or third line defence, so obviously we're short of defence with McFadden still out. I do think that he could just potentially just come on there and sort of freshen up a bit. I'm just reading this question. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, that's my opinion on Silikis. I just think he's literally been in there to put the pressure on. And that'll be that, really. So next question is about sort of this guy sort of watched the highlights from last night and sort of asked if the Steelers sort of played more physical. From what I saw last night, it looked like we genuinely wanted to win. So we were getting bodies in, we were sort of hitting, potentially fighting, sort of. I think Martinelli even got involved in a couple of sort of roughing sort of minors, Neely got involved in a few. And it's something that I haven't really seen much this season, but I do think that Martinelli definitely stepped up his physical abilities last night. He could have been he could have fought, I do think. If that game had gone on for 10 minutes longer, Martinelli would have fought someone. And I think likewise with Neely, because I think both of them were getting really, really annoyed, as well as DeLuca. DeLuca played like someone who just sort of been prodded in the backside with a cattle prod, and he got a bit angry at him. And he was running around, skating around as fast as possible, throwing hits left, right, and centre, trying to rough people up, washing his glove in their face and stuff like that, just to sort of get it going a little bit. The fans seemed to respond a lot to it. And what that did, I thought, for the whole play, was that I thought it gave us the upper hand. People might have seen it differently, but with the physical play that we were playing with, I do think it gave the Steelers the upper hand because Guildford aren't really a physical side, and because they're not a physical side, then that means that we can capitalise on that. And we did a couple of occasions because we seemed to sort of rattle them a little bit. Um, the Martinelli one and Baldwin, I think it was for the Guildford Flames. He's quite a good player, Baldwin. I think he fought Lyndon Springer for the Manchester Storm the other week. I think that was him, and he's obviously a player that can hold his own. But when we've got players like Martinelli and Neely that are roughing players like that up, who know they can all sort of hold their own, sort of can be sort of a physical presence for the other side, yet we've got players that are coming in to rough them up. I do think it shows a lot of physical progression really with the side, and because we have that physical progression, that does mean that I think we're more likely to win a game really, because I do think that the Elite League needs more physical sides really, um, and yeah, so I do think the Elite League needs more physical sides, and when you do play physical, you're more likely to win, especially in the Elite League. Um, Cardiff made to look really poor in Manchester Storm's ring last night. Do I think that Belfast have a chance at the title? I think Belfast will win the title. I don't think they've got a chance. I think that Cardiff are the ones that don't have a chance. Because I think that Cardiff have really sort of dropped off the pace. They're not as good as they once were. Um, Obviously last season they were excellent. Sort of season before they were absolutely fantastic. Season before that, all for the last 4 seasons now, 4 seasons, Cardiff have just been brilliant. On and off the ice. And I do think that it is Belfast's turn really to sort of show the Devils sort of who's boss. Now, um, and leading on from that, so obviously I've answered that Belfast, I think, will win the league. Do you think the Steelers um, sort of look like they're going to beat the Cardiff Devils tonight? Yeah. Oh, I shouldn't have said that, but I really, really hope we do. Obviously, every time I predict something, it normally goes to pot and we normally lose. So I'm not going to predict any. I predicted a 5-2 Cardiff win the other day. But now, having looked at last night, looked at Wednesday, with Cardiff's result at Manchester last night, I think that we have a massive chance tonight. And if we're going to capitalise on anything, it's going to be beating the Devils tonight. And if we do beat the Devils tonight, then I'll be in tears, sort of drinking in celebration. Just yes, we have beat the Devils, and it'd be an unbelievable feeling to beat the Devils. Like literally, this would be a cup final in my opinion. Like seriously, I don't care if people say, "Oh yeah, yeah, it's just a game." It's just a game. I don't care. If we beat the Devils tonight, it'd be excellent. It'd be an absolute sort of massive achievement. Obviously, so I'm going to sort of answer it. Do I think we have a chance? Yeah, I do, and I think we'll win. Oh, I shouldn't have said it, but I do think we'll win. Someone said that obviously what I've said about Brown's sort of brave, sort of about him sort of coming in, not getting much shifts. So someone said that's brave, and yeah, it is quite a brave sort of opinion on him. I do think that if he did come into the side and he was sort of on the fourth line, could he make an impact? Well, I'd like to see him play against the Panthers or someone like that, because if Brown played against the Panthers, I can guarantee that Kieran Brown would be sort of the man to sort of stand up for himself, make himself look big, sort of make everyone else out to be sort of less physical than him. I'm sure very soon that Kieran Brown will be wearing a visor as well, because I think his birthday is coming up quite soon, as I remember last year. So if he was to wear a visor, then I think, as daft as it sounds, I think people would respect him more if he wore a visor, like on the Steelers bench, because it makes him look more of an adult. It don't make him look like a kid anymore. And obviously, I play hockey, I wear a visor, and now I look sort of older. And before that, it was Cage, yeah. And I do think that people respond to it if he had a visor. As daft as it sounds, it might just seem a conspiracy, but I do think it would help. Um, uh, Someone said, like, as a Storm fan, they wish they sort of played with a fourth line. Now, what a fourth line does in the IHL for me is it's just a massive energy shift line. So, say that you're sort of getting run ragged towards the end of the game, you're sort of 2-1 up with 2 minutes left, and you're constantly changing your lines, and you've got a fourth line to come out and sort of change you up, sort of freshen up the legs. I think I think it's massive in the IHL to have a fourth line, because a lot of teams are really good at last minute goals, sort of coming in, and obviously getting pucks on net. And obviously, if you have a fourth line to literally sprint to it, like hustle to every single puck, sort of being physical, you get new guys out. You know, you've got fresher legs, you've got fresher sort of altogether. You've got like a balance. You know, fourth line comes out, everyone responds to it. They put a shift in, and they look really good. And what are the first line going to do? They're going to go out and put a massive shift in to make themselves look even better than the fourth line. So, yeah, I do think it is massive that there is a fourth line in the Elite League, because what it does is it does add energy to the side. It also adds I do think it adds more physicality as well, because if the fourth line are going out and being physical, then they're going to sort of look better, and they're going to sort of impress the coach. So, um, so yeah, I think fourth line's massive. Do you think Kieran Brown is underrated? This question has come from a girlfriend, so it's quite um, yeah, yeah. Kieran Brown is underrated, because he came in last season. Well, last season he came in, and he was sort of really good. You noticed that he wanted to sort of perform, wanted to make a name for himself. But now Paul Thompson's gone, sort of youth goes out of the side. It sort of doesn't, like, sort of the youth's gone out of the side. It makes us look sort of a bit older. We're not sort of as interested in the youth product of Great Britain. And obviously, without us being sort of interested in that youth, then we look like a side that just sort of relies on the older players to be sort of more involved. And obviously, if we had the younger players, then I think we'd sort of progress more. So yeah, I do think he's underrated. Do you feel Brandon Whistle is underrated? Yeah. I saw him play last night, and obviously, a lot of people did. And the way he sort of moves around the ice, the way he wants to get on every single loose puck, is sort of what we need in the side, because we need someone who's going to come in, going to be more sort of like they want it a lot more. And obviously, if he wants it a lot more, then I think other players would respond to that. So it'd be daft really for him not to sort of play a lot. And I do think, yeah, again, Brandon Whistle's really underrated. Jackson Whistle or Matt Climie. If we got someone who said Whistle every time. Whistle every time. And obviously, I've oh yeah, I'm just gonna say Jackson Whistle, because obviously Matt Climie's gone, and there's not much we can do about it. I do think that when Matt Climie was here, possibly Matt Climie was better in some games, but Jackson Whistle has really sort of stepped up the mark, and he's a lot better now. What players would you bring back that Paul Thompson released in the summer? Oh, right, Levi Nelson, for what? Even though he's retired, I don't care. I just want him back. I really want him back, because he was just excellent, like all over the ice. He was possibly one of the best players going. Oh, Levi Nelson, Andreas Valdix, I'd also bring back. I think, simply because Andreas Valdix was an excellent player on the ice, and he just sort of wanted it a lot. Another player I would bring back as well, rather than having Silikis, would definitely be Fitzgerald. Because Fitzgerald was just, I don't know why we let him go really. I think we said he was too slow, but now he's captain in the Glasgow Clan, and he's doing really well for them. So I don't understand why we really let him go. If anyone's got any idea why we let him go, then please comment it, because obviously I don't understand that well, and I don't really. obviously we don't get many interviews as to why players go. Um, so another player I'd possibly bring back, well, to be honest, a player that I wouldn't release in the first place is Mustakov. Yeah, I do know that he had quite a few sort of off-ice problems with fans. That's just, I don't know if it's rumours or if it's true. So I'm not going to go into that. But obviously, Mustakovs, I do think would have been the best bet for goalie to start this season. Rather than I do think that he commanded sort of the defence really well. Mustakovs, he sort of stepped up and sort of looked really proactive. But apparently he was quite a nasty person to quite a lot of people. So obviously, if that is true, then I just wouldn't want him back. We'll do one more, I think. Not like one more question, but sort of one more player. I do think that maybe... Oh, it's hard, really, because there's a lot of players that I wouldn't have wanted to release. Like Westerlin, for example. That was just an absolute shocker of a decision. Why ever would release Westerlin in the first place, I will never know. And Neely, because obviously them two are now back because they wanted to come back. You know, I don't know why we released them in the first place, because at the end of the day, they were two players that really wanted to do well for the club. Neely comes in and plays an absolute blinder for the games that he's here with us. And Westerlin puts that much of a shift in every game. You think he'll come off black and blue and he'll be exhausted. He was excellent when he was here, Westerlin. And I don't know. I don't understand personally why we released him. To go to a side that he then comes back to us, and he sort of wants to prove himself again. And I don't think that it was fair on Westerlin in the first place to release him. And I think that maybe if we hadn't have released him, then I think at the start of the season would have been a little bit better. Because as daft as it sounds, players like Jonas Westerlin make you better. And I think it's proven that he has come back and he has made us better. John Armstrong, again, another player that's back from last season that we released in the summer. Well, it's just frustrating, really, because you look back at that summer and you're thinking, like, why did we release half of those players? Obviously, you've got Wauer and Freta that both retired, which was a nightmare for me. I wasn't too happy about that. Obviously, we've had us upsetting retirements in the past few seasons with Davian going out in the season prior to this, and with Davian again, like he was season before. It's incredible sort of how time flies. Like they've been out of hockey for a while now, and if they hadn't retired, would we have been a better team? Well, Wow was really tired, and you know, it would have still made us better. If you could sign any player from the league, who would it be? Now this is hard. If any player, so if there was any player that I could sign from the league, it'd probably be Darcy Murphy from the Belfast Giants, because I think he's absolutely excellent. Like the way he plays is absolutely incredible. Like seriously, I watched him sort of the other week, and like I've been watching him on a lot of highlights, and he's just genuinely good. Like it'd be between him and Tyler Beskorowany, because Beskorowany was absolutely fantastic for Edinburgh Capitals, but just had no defence in front of him last season. I remember him performing a one-man show but still conceding 7 against the Steelers. And the fact that he was sort of possibly one of the best goaltenders I saw last season, and then he went to the Belfast Giants, I just think it proves that sort of a good goalie really needs a good defence in front of him to make him look good. And I mean, Jackson Whistle is a good goalie, and like I've said, I just think the defence at times this season have just completely hung him out to dry. And if we didn't hang him out to dry, then I think that we would sort of be better than we are. I went off on a tangent there, but obviously Darcy Murphy, I'm sticking with that. I'd like to see him play for the Steelers. I'll do another one actually as well. If there was any player that you could sign, that's an hard question. It'd also be I forgot his name. Who is it? No, I'm just going to stick with Darcy and Beskorowany. Do you think that the rivalry with Manchester this season is the one bigger than the rivalry with Nottingham? Yeah, I'd say so, because Manchester are a tough team to play, really. And Nottingham are also a tough team to play. But the energy in the crowd is more up for the Manchester Storm games than it is for the Nottingham games this season. And I've noticed it happen on a lot of occasions where sort of the fans have sort of brought themselves more up for the games against Manchester than they have for the games against Cardiff. Now, I don't know why that is, personally, because obviously Nottingham has been our main rival for absolute years on end. And this season is the first season where I've really noticed the fact that possibly the Manchester games mean more to the fans than the ones against Nottingham. And I think it has something to do with, obviously, Jay Rosehill last season doing his best to genuinely tear up the league in terms of how many penalties you can potentially get during one season. And I think without him last season, I don't think the rival with Manchester would be anything what it is like now. Simply because he just portrayed himself as this big brute, which he wasn't. Which he isn't a big brute. He's just sort of a player that's played in the higher leagues like the NHL, and he's been really physical there. So I just think he thought that, oh yeah, I'll come to the Elite League and I'll sort of tear it up there. Obviously, he played for the Clan the season before with Ryan Finnerty, because Finnerty likes that sort of player that's going to sort of wind up the opposition and make them angry with him and then draw penalties. Obviously, you've got players like Lyndon Springer as well. I mean, you come into games where you're seeing Lyndon Springer play against you, and I don't think anyone can disagree that I don't like Lyndon Springer, because I don't. I just find him a pretty toxic player, really. And because of his toxicity, they're the sort of teams I want to beat simply because he plays for them. And it might seem daft, but there's not a single player on the Panthers team that I can fully say that I dislike. Possibly Robert Farmer, but apart from that, yeah, I do think Manchester. Um, ooh, if you could replace any of our D with someone else from the league, who would it be? So if I was going to swap someone, it'd be Sylvester Silikis, definitely. Swapping with, oh come on, I know it. You see, it's hard like to think off the top of your head, like players that you could potentially sign. Dallas Earnhardt, I think, from Manchester Storm, because I do think that his potential sort of to drop the glove, to sort of make physical plays, to sort of be a physical sort of presence on the ice, is something that you can learn from, really, and sort of notice that he is an excellent sort of defenseman. Now, people have said, oh yeah, but Dallas Earnhardt's quite an ugly fella. Who cares? If he can play hockey and he can score goals, like he's genuinely proven for the Manchester Storm, who are a struggling side at the minute, but every game I see that the Manchester Storm play, Dallas Earnhardt just seems to score. And he's sort of starting to get silly now, because he's a good player and he's a good defenseman, but I never expected him to start sort of scoring goals like sort of left, right, and centre. And I do think that if there was a swap on the cards, it'd definitely be Silikis for Dallas Earnhardt, because Silikis just adds nothing at the minute to the team other than what I said, sort of to put the pressure on. And Dallas Earnhardt would come into the team and sort of play like a sort of enforcer type role, sort of defensive defenseman. I can't work out if Dallas Earnhardt is an enforcer or not, because he fights and he hits a lot, but he never really sort of, I don't know. I'm not sure really. I just think he'd add quite a bit to our team. Ben O'Connor has stopped scoring recently. Why do you think that is? I think it's because, I don't know. I genuinely haven't thought about that as to why he has stopped scoring, because at the end of the day he used to add quite a lot of goals, and I always used to expect if a goal was going to come from a defenseman, it would have been O'Connor like in the past. So why he stopped scoring goals, I don't particularly know. I'd say it's something to do with sort of his confidence, really. I think that when he first came back from the league he was in before, I think that he noticed that the Elite League wasn't actually as good as he used to think it was, so he's gone sort of above his level to then drop back down to he's gone above his level to then drop down to something that's possibly below his level. And I think at first he was sort of like he was still playing like a Swedish Hockey League player, like sort of running rings around everyone, scoring goals like it were nothing, and the fact he was sort of doing that, and now he's sort of stopped. So I think he's just sort of found his level again, sort of with the Steelers obviously in the league. I just think it's sort of calmed down quite a lot, and it has become sort of his level again, if you like. So he's had to step up his level for the summer to sort of start the season in a higher league. But now that he's started playing against sort of the same teams as he has in the past, I don't think he's quite as effective as he was when he first joined back. If that's fair to say, I don't think it is really fair to say because I think he's a really good player, Ben O'Connor. I think he's a lot better than he was last season. This season for us, I think he's really stepped up his performances in that regard, and obviously now that he's back, he stepped up at the start of his sort of second. I think it's his. It would have been quite. It's like his fourth season with us, and I just think that he seems to have sort of found his level a bit more now, and I do think that's why he stopped scoring goals. Do you think we'll make the playoffs this season? That's quite a fitting question, really, because it fits in with like the start of the video. Do I think we will make the playoffs? Yes, I do. I think we'll easily make them, actually. I think by the end of the season, I think there's about 16 or 16 games left. I think by the end of the season, we will easily make the playoffs by about 4 or 5 points. And I think we'll end up finishing about 5th or 6th. Obviously, this is me sort of dreaming a little bit, but at the end of the day, we need a strong finish to this season. We've got 15 games left, or 16. We've got to sort of pile the pressure on, really. We've got to make it seem as though we're wanting sort of to get in those playoffs, and by that we're gonna have to start winning games. We're gonna have to start sort of responding to the to our league position a little bit more, because I don't think we'd responded to it that well so far. I think we've sort of dropped off the level, and now I think we're going to notice that we need to get results, and we have got to sort of perform well to get the playoffs. So yeah, I do think we'll get the playoffs in the end, but I do think it's going to be a rocky road to get it. But by the end of the season, I do think we'll be about 4 points in front, and I do think we'll get the playoffs in some position. I've said like 5th or 6th, but we'll get it in 8th, 7th, 6th or 5th. Any of them, and that's fine. I don't care really. I'll see that as quite an overachieving season from what we've got, sort of players wise. And obviously at the start of the season, I predicted we'd finish 4th on the year. And yeah, I think we will. If you could sign one NHL player for our team, who would it be? Oh, come on. Anze Kopitar. Because I personally am a Kings fan, and I play NHL and the Xbox and stuff like that. And I know NHL's not real life, but I know sort of a good player when I see one. And Anze Kopitar just sort of seems to me like the sort of player that you'd want on your side. And with him being sort of a well-known player amongst the NHL and sort of a real point scorer, I think it'd have to be Kopitar. And yes, there are better players than Kopitar in the NHL, I agree with that. But Kopitar, I do think, could add... Well, I'm not even going to say could add, because he's never going to come to the Steelers like, but it would be an excellent sort of... That'd be an excellent player. I mean, it'd be perfect now, leading up to playoffs. So, if anyone's got Kopitar's number, then give him a ring. Sort of say, do you want to come to the Steelers? We'll pay you like £10 a match or something like that. Get him in. Other than him, probably if I were gonna Caesar Centerman, I might do like a right wing, left wing if I get through it without another question that I might not be able to remember. If I was gonna like pick another one like TJ Oshie, someone like that, so it's coming to the side, Capitals player. Obviously we've got. If you were gonna go family ties, you could say Jordan Eberle, because Tanner Eberle is like half cousin or something like that, or cousin, and I think that'll be quite nice, sort of that chemistry between them two. An excellent player in Jordan Eberle compared with Sylvester Silikis. I think that'd be a good matchup. Obviously, well, what I'm excited for is the USA v Canada hockey game that I'm hoping to get towards in April time. I'm hoping to get tickets for that. And obviously, if that was to be played, I'd love to see sort of the players that sort of play in that and sort of compare it really to how quick it is compared to the IHL. I know full well that it's going to be like ridiculous. Sort of people are just going to be people won't even be able to see puck probably, but it's just going to be an experience and a half. If I get a ticket for that, then I'll be absolutely buzzing. You know, I couldn't think of anything better. Someone says here's 2 tickets to see a USA v Canada hockey game. Oh, I don't think they'd understand how happy I'd be. Like honestly, it'd be great. So yeah, that's that really. I think like not for the video that, but obviously, the if there was 2 players that I would bring in, um, oh dear, my girlfriend's just put hint taken in the comments. Yeah, take the hint, Ellie. Yeah, so them 2 really, they're the sort of players that I'd like to bring into the side, especially if we were going to sign an NHL player. So yeah, I'm going to end this video here because I think that's good enough really. I think 47 minutes for a video isn't too bad. If you have got one more question, just put it in now very quickly and I'll try and answer it as much as possible. But yeah, NHL players wise, you've got loads to choose from and you've got a lot of quality to choose from. And if you did get that quality in the IHL, then well, it'd just be a completely different league. And I think it'd be almost like a dream, wouldn't it, to sign an NHL player for an IHL side? Because sometimes they sort of come in and do well. I think Cardiff got one in the lockout quite a few years ago. Who signed for him? I think it was like, I can't remember his name now. It was quite a hard name to pronounce, but it was one of them players. So yeah, I'm going to leave this video here, guys. I hope you have enjoyed this sort of question and answer sort of session, and I'll do this again possibly next week or some other time. So